In today's video, we're going to be talking about the human-animal hybrid, the different aspects of human nature as it pertains to consciousness. So, if we stay in the vein of Hermeticism, as above, so below, as within, so without, understanding how that leads to a degree of centeredness of being and an understanding of oneself, what we come to realize is that the upper layers and the lower layers of consciousness are the conscious realm and then the unconscious realm. What do I mean by that? I said a whole lot. So, if we think about consciousness, right? That our conscious realm of what we perceive to be our objective reality and how we understand our objective reality is ultimately a reflection of our inner reality. So that inner reality is our unconscious realm, the realm of our innate desires, the realm of our instincts, things that have been hardwired into us as human animals. Because part of human nature is that we are not just human beings, but we're also ecological beings. So we have an animal shadow as people. The way that Marie von Franz ultimately articulates it is she says that we are a cultivated man and we have a primitive shadow. And within the primitive shadow, that is where the realm of our desires, our behavioral and instinctual desires as human beings exist. But why is any transformation necessary at all? Why does the psyches change in a culture over the course of centuries? In the Jungian view, this is connected with a peculiar contrariety within human nature, namely, a certain opposition between consciousness and the unconscious. I mentioned above that the collective unconscious factors have a double aspect. On the one hand, they express themselves as instincts or as drives, as behavioral forms such as sexuality, status seeking, child rearing, and territoriality, and on the other hand, they manifest as a peculiarly human religio mythic fantasy world. Okay, so let's kind of break that down and kind of walk through that a little bit. What is the psyches? So you can think of the psyches as the cosmovision, right, of a group of people, right? Their collective consciousness. And what Marie von Franz noticed was that over time, this collective consciousness changes with time. And so she's asking, well, why is that? Well, what does she believe that to be? And what she realizes and what she uncovers for us is that that's because the unconscious, the underlying layer of consciousness, is at once the realm of our instincts and our desires, but it's also the realm of our imagination, which is where as she talked about, the religious, spiritual, and mythic fantasy world comes to play. So, in order for us to access that realm of spirituality, we need to have healthy, mature archetypes, and that ultimately spur and lead one to individuate. Okay, so as it pertains to the individuation process, I can make a quick analogy about how gender nuanced men understand their lived experiences and then how straight men understand theirs. So, growing up as a kid, right, in theater, for example, I'm behind the scenes and I'm helping, this young lady do her quick change. So she takes off her so she does her 1-2 on the stage. She runs to the side and she changes into her dress, right? So she got to change into the white dress into the red one. And so I'm helping her do that. As a man, as a gender nuanced man, I don't have an animal shadow for a woman. So I'm ultimately not going to see her in her vulnerable state like that changing. I'm not going to see that as sexually desire. um I'm not going to see her as attractive or desire her sexually, because the hardwiring of me as a gender norms person does not create something like that because we both touch earth. We both have affluencia. So she can trust me enough, right? If she trusts me to be able to sit with her in that moment. A straight man, on the other hand, is a man whose animal shadow is directed and wired for a woman. So a man cannot sit there and see the most beautiful woman take off her clothes like that and change in her vulnerability unless she really trusts him, because they are going to see a woman's body as desirous. They're going to have a sexual appetite for a woman. So that's one of the ways that gender nuanced people are able to differentiate and individuate from straight men. So the reason why it's really important to get familiar with these archetypes is because the animal shadow, if it's not integrated correctly in a man, can manifest itself in misogyny. This is where misogyny comes from, right? Or rather, one of the places that misogyny comes from. So you have a man who, for example, doesn't have an archetype that is whole and mature, doesn't have the archetype of the hunter. Instead, the shadow side of the hunter would be the wolf, as in the story of Little Red Riding Hood. So the wolf in the story represents a man in his animal shadow, and the hunter represents the positive aspect of it, the light aspect of it, a man that touches earth. We'll get into that as we begin to talk more about misogyny and more about archetypes and why healthy archetypes are reflective of consciousness. So that is all that I have for you today. That was understanding human nature in terms of consciousness, and I will catch you back in my next video.